2nd February 1935, Talk 23. Mr. Evans Wench continued another day. May one have more than one spiritual master? Maharishi, who is a master? He is the self after all. According to the stages of the development of the mind, the self manifests as the master externally. The famous ancient Saint Avadhuta said that he had more than 24 masters. The master is one from whom one learns anything. The guru may be sometimes inanimate also, as in the case of Avadhut. God, Guru, and the Self are identical. A spiritual minded man thinks that God is all pervading and takes God for his Guru. Later, God brings him in contact with a personal Guru, and the man recognizes him as all in all. Lastly, the same man is made by the grace of the Master to feel that his self is the reality and nothing else. Thus, he finds that the self is the master. Devotee. Does Sri Bhagwana initiate his disciples? Maharishi kept silent. Thereafter, one of the devotees took it upon himself to answer, saying, Maharishi doesn't see anyone as outside his self, so there are no disciples for him. His grace is all pervading, and he communicates his grace to any deserving individual in silence. Devotee. How does book lore help in self-realization? Only so far as to make one spiritually minded. Devotee. How far does intellect help? Only so far as to make one sink the intellect in the ego, and the ego in the self. 4th February 1935. Talk 24. Mrs. Pigot, why do you take milk but not eggs? Maharishi, the domesticated cows yield more milk than necessary for their cows, and they find it a pleasure to be relieved of the milk. Devotee, but the hen cannot contain the eggs. Maharishi, but there are potential lives in them. Devotee, thoughts cease suddenly, then I rises up as suddenly and continues. It is only in the feeling and not in the intellect. Can it be right? Maharishi, it is certainly right. Thoughts must cease and reason disappears for I to rise up and be felt. Feeling is the prime factor and not reason. Devotee, moreover, it is not in the head but in the right side of the chest. Maharishi, it ought to be so, because the heart is there. Devotee, when I see outside it disappears, what is to be done? Maharishi, it must be held tight. Devotee, if one is active with such remembrance, will the action be always right? Maharishi, they ought to be. However, such a person is not concerned with the right or wrong of his actions. Such a person's actions are God's, and therefore they must be right. Devotee, why then the restrictions of food given for such? Maharishi, your present experience is due to the influence of the atmosphere you are in. Can you have it outside this atmosphere? The experience is spasmodic. Until it becomes permanent, practice is necessary. Restrictions of food are aids for such experience to be repeated. After one gets established in truth, the restrictions drop away naturally. Moreover, food influences the mind, and it must be kept pure. The lady told a disciple later, I feel the vibrations from him more intensely, and I am able to reach the eye center more readily than before.